Okay, so go with me for a second. Have you ever seen a street performer in the city? Imagine it. It's a typical weekday morning. You're standing on the corner of a busy intersection, surrounded by a sea of people. Cars honking, bikes whizzing by, everyone is moving fast in their own worlds. Heads down, earbuds in, coffee in hand. You're waiting for the light to change, and you notice the street performer. He's got this huge tuba on, clearly standing out from the crowd, and he's pouring his heart into this upbeat song. But everyone around him is just rushing past. He doesn't stop though, he just keeps performing. Does he feel invisible? Does his music make a difference? Then, as the light turns and the crowd steps forward into their busy day ahead, you see this little girl just standing there with a smile on her face, mesmerized by the fun song. She tugs on her mom's hand and then does a little dance as she makes her way across the street, and it hits you. Maybe what seems small or unnoticed can make a big impact. Hey, I'm Jean, and I'm stoked to be here with you today. You know, sometimes our choices can make a big impact, like performing on the street just to bring people some joy, or even in those small choices, like choosing to notice someone everyone else is kind of ignoring. It begs the question, how do you know if you're living a life that matters? I think the first thing you have to do is look at your intentional choices. Take a good look at your actions, the things you are choosing to fill your time with, the things you talk about, the things you obsess over, the things you are known for, and the things that you choose to do. If you want to know if you're living a life that matters, ask yourself, what do my choices tell those around me about what I believe? The book of 1 John tells us more about this. There are 3 small books in the back of your Bible, written by a guy named John. They're called 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. John also wrote one of the Gospels, which is called John. Yeah, okay, so not very original. But John was one of the original 12 disciples of Jesus. He witnessed who Jesus was up close and personal. And I would say that John also wanted to live a life that mattered. Early in the book of 1 John, the author identified himself as an eyewitness of the accounts of Jesus. He was essentially telling the readers of his letter, listen, I walked with Jesus. I talked with Jesus. I did life with Jesus here on earth. And what he taught me is life-changing. 1 John chapter 2 gives us some insight into living a life that matters. John wrote, "This is how we know that we know him, if we keep his commands. The one who says, I have come to know him, and yet doesn't keep his commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, truly in him the love of God is made complete. This is how we know we are in him. The one who says he remains in him should walk just as he walked." Those are some strong words, John. But remember, John knew what he was talking about. These are the inspired words of God that John wrote down. He was there with Jesus, walking around with him, listening to him, learning from him. John said, plain and simple, if you're going to say that you're a follower of Jesus, then you need to do the things that Jesus said. In other words, our actions and our choices have to line up with who we say we are. If you are truly following Jesus, you're going to want to keep his commands. If you don't, well, you're lying to yourself and to others about who you say you are. If we say we are following Christ, but then don't act like Jesus, what is the world supposed to believe about who we are? And more importantly, what is the world supposed to believe about the Jesus that we say we follow? Let's bring it even closer to home. What do the choices you made this week tell those around you? What did your actions say? Did your actions say that you follow Jesus and then you also like to gossip a little? Did you claim that Jesus satisfies every longing and desire and then maybe looked at things you shouldn't? Did you say you love God and then not spend any time with him this week? Hear me say, we're all going to make mistakes. We are human, and that means we're going to mess up. But are you trying? Do you have a desire to follow Jesus in a way that is consistent with the life that he called you to? The idea isn't that you try harder or do better. That's not the point. The goal is to walk as Jesus walked, to daily have our lives look a little more like Jesus than it did the day before. I heard a quote once that said, what you say you believe plus what you actually do is what you actually believe. In other words, if we say that we follow Jesus, but we aren't really living it out, it might be time to take a look at if we actually believe what we say we do. I want to challenge you this week to spend some time talking to Jesus about how your actions line up with who you say you are. Make space to read and reflect on 1 John chapter 2 this week. And if you feel like you're missing the mark in any of these areas, maybe it's time to get honest with yourself and with God. If your actions aren't quite lining up with who you know you are in Jesus, you have a God who is ready to forgive, who's waiting and ready for you to come to him just as you are. What I love about God is that he loves us just as we are, and he loves us enough not to leave us as we are. He wants to see us grow, to change to be more like him, to reflect him to the world around us, to live into this set-apart life that he has called us into. The way we live our lives matters. We are called by God to be set apart, to live a life that is rooted in a love for God that flourishes and overflows into love for the people around us. And we can do it together.